just remember to call it the Alumni Roundtable. Benny?
What?
The Alumni Roundtable?
The Alumni Roundtable.
That's what we were calling them, no?
Sure. Just the Alumni Roundtable. Mouth of the Wolves.
Could it be a square table?
No, whatever.
Just the Alumni Roundtable. All right. Quiet. Here we go.
Five, four, three, two, one, fire.
Good morning, AUR. Good afternoon, wherever you are. This is Brian Kapersky, and I am back with another Alumni Roundtable. And today I'm joined by AUR alumni expert extraordinaire, Mr. Giles Smith, all the way in from Milwaukee?
Originally Milwaukee, now we're living in Vermont, yeah.
And now you're back in Rome.
And now we're back in Rome for the moment, yeah.
That sounds like a long story that we want to get into. Tell us, you obviously graduated from AUR. Mm-hmm. What year did you graduate?
Spring of 2008 with a degree in international relations.
Wow, good.
So that was almost 10 years ago now.
It
should
is.
Be 10 years in this.
It will be.
This
10-year anniversary. Welcome back.
Makes you feel old.
Well, it does. Age is just a number. One of these things. I always say that. It doesn't really matter what number you're attached to. It's how young you feel in here, man. So, tell us, how did you end up at AUR?
Originally.
We talked before in the pre-interview that you actually chose AUR to continue another degree.
Correct.
What did you do before AUR? Start us back time.
So I was attending the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, studying business marketing and history, and decided that it would be a good idea to go study abroad somewhere. And I hated Spanish while I was in middle school and high school, and didn't really care for French either, so I figured I'd try Italian. Took a year, and then because there was a reciprocal program with the University of Wisconsin-Madison, I was able to, I think I was the first or one of the first 3 kids that all went at the same time to use their program to come over here and study at AUR.
Study abroad.
And did a full year. So there were 3 of us that did full year study abroad.
Oh, wow, cool. Instead of the normal semester.
Yeah, instead of the normal 3.5 months where you do it, you get used to the society and the culture, and then all of a sudden they're like, nah, you got to leave.
Yeah, go back home.
Yeah, and that was, so that was fall of 2004 to spring of 2005. Went home, graduated with a degree in business marketing and double major in history. And
double major in history?
Yep.
Wow.
Lots of classes, lots of learning, lots of reading, lots of books.
Wow.
And then came right back and started a second undergraduate degree in international relations while I was working full-time bartending downtown.
Where did you work downtown?
I was at the Abbey Theater for 2.5 years. I did about 6 months at On the Rocks when I first got here, which is in Testaccio, which is actually ironic because that's where we're living right now.
Look at that.
And then did some freelance marketing and promotion and open mic nights and party planning and that kind of whole thing. And then ended up doing a little bit of tour guiding at the end of my first stint here, or I should say my second stint when I came back. And then my wife and I moved back to the States in December of 2008 and opened what was at the time a 24-bed European-style boutique hostel at the base of a mountain in Vermont.
Hostel Tevere, right?
Hostel Tevere.
I found that yesterday looking for
a little piece of Rome in the heart of Vermont.
Very cool. Yeah, you still have the website up?
Yeah, everything's up. Oh, it's still open, yeah.
Oh, wow, cool.
Well, I mean, it was open last night when I talked to somebody who was there, but whether or not it's burned to the ground at this point, I'm not sure. It'll be our first winter away, not running it. We've been doing this is year 9 now.
Oh, wow.
We used to have a full-service restaurant. We have a full-service craft beer bar. And I believe right now we have 29 beds set up. So we have a little bit of a different arrangement where the sleeping quarters are. But it's been going great. Because of all this, I've been able to start like a hospitality consulting company. and I work with a group in New York City called Override, OVRRIDE, for any alumni that are living in the city. Check them out. They do bus tours to all over the Northeast, and then they actually run international ski and snowboard trips.
Oh, cool.
So might be able to link up with those guys in Austria in like January. And otherwise, back here again, because my wife took a job cooking at the American Academy in the Rome Sustainable Food Project.
Very interesting.
Yes. So she is not a trained chef by any means, but grew up in a restauranting family. And like I said, the restaurant that we ran, we only shut down quasi like 2 years ago, right after our son was born. And
what kind of restaurant was it?
It was kind of like a world kind of World Fair Americana, super like homey, delicious meals. We cooked for the 95 percenters. We didn't, we didn't cook for the top, kind of Michelin star people. It was fairly priced, really, really well thought out recipes, locally sourced everything. We actually have been running a burger night once a week for the last 2 years now, just to keep the restaurant going. And we get the beef, I should say, from cows that live right down the road, about 4 miles away. And usually when people ask why the beef is so good, I just tell them because the cow was mooing on Tuesday. So
fresh,
very fresh, very fresh,
good.
And so we're back. I'm gonna have to go back and forth a few times and deal with some business stuff.
Okay.
But right now, I've completely reversaled with my wife, and I'm taking care of our 3.5-year-old son full time.
That's a full-time job in and of itself.
Correct.
I know very well.
With one of your own, I think you would.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite fun and quite entertaining, but quite demanding as well. So
and exhausting.
Absolutely.
But worth every minute, I think.
So when did you come back into Rome?
We got back right at the beginning of November.
Okay. You've smoothed your apartment and every place to live.
Yeah, everything's all been
back
set.
on the ground. Your wife's back into work.
Yep, it's we got here like 10 days before her kind of session started, just to reacclimate and get everything settled. And we've got the kid in a daycare program twice a week with a friend of ours who has a almost 3-year-old son. And yeah, so I'm doing this and doing some writing, and I work for a website called AS Roma 360, and I do kind of social commentary, not regarding the team as a sports entity, but more of how it fits into society.
Okay.
And yeah, just kind of doing the freelance thing while we're over here and whenever I can fit it in.
Good. What do you think of AUR? You've come down here a couple of times now.
It's definitely changed since I was here. The program seems to have gotten bigger. It seems like there's a lot more focus on resident and permanent students, as opposed to when I was here, there were over, there's 500 or 600 kids, and 500 of them were study abroads. Yeah. So 500 new faces each semester became, I think, a little bit trying for a lot of the professors. And I think I was also one of the last classes that you actually had to apply to get into the school before they just started letting everybody and their mother study abroad because it was worth the money, I guess, and this was a problem that was European wide at that point, where anybody who wanted to study abroad just signed up, got in, went over, and had a 3-month holiday usually. Right. But I definitely see a lot of progress forward. I know accreditation was a huge thing for the school, and them getting that really turned the corner. And then I know there were like a lot of great presidents over the last 4 or 5 years who've really tried to put AUR into another level of university life. So yeah, it's good to come back and see. It's good to reconnect with people. I think on the whole, you got how many more spaces and classes and kids coming through, which is just a testament to the hard work and the actual. What's the right word? The dedication that most of the staff has put in. I mean, I've been in contact with Kathy and Stefano for years. Every time we come back, we try to come back every year, and it's always nice to see a smiling, friendly face.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So you've never really left AUR. You've always remained in contact with.
Tried to, yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of great friends around the world who we might not see each other for years, but we'll all end up back here at some point, and then it's a little mini reunion. Which is always nice because it was a lot of good times 10 years ago, and looking forward to more. And I don't know, we both love the city, my wife and I, and if we could move here permanently, we would. But
Is that the plan then? Or are you here
No, I think the plan is to get through these 5 months and see how everything goes, see if our business functions back home or not without us. I mean, that's, to be honest, it's just terrifying. We opened up last week. Everything seemed to be okay, but it's also December for us is usually pretty slow until Christmas week.
Right.
And then it's balls to the wall. So we'll see how everybody back home handles it. I think we've got a great support team and staff in place. And it's, there's not a whole lot I can do from over here other than be ready to take a phone call at 6 o'clock in the morning because something happened at the bar at midnight over there.
Yeah, exactly. So talk to me about the differences between the American experience of university as opposed to what you got from here.
In America, you mean, versus...
Yeah, we are an American university in Rome.
Yes.
Right. So we do follow that same formula.
Yeah, sure.
But were there any differences that you noticed in terms of, let's say, expanding culturally?
Yeah, I mean, well, the big difference, I think, is the way that AUR kind of fits into the community here and is able to access what is possibly some of the greatest, archaeological, historical sites in the world. Yeah. I mean, it is, Rome is one big ruin. And that's something you always have to explain to people when they're coming over for the first time, that there's really only like 2 or 3 buildings that are actually that old that are still intact, the Pantheon being one. Yeah. But for the most part, you have a situation where AUR is very similar to a lot of the smaller liberal arts schools in the States, where it's very focused on student-professor interactions and professors really giving kids the opportunity to kind of study and focus on what they want versus what some giant curriculum is telling you to do, such as that, I went to UWM and there were 22,000 kids. And when I was here, there were 124 permanent students, I want to say. So there's a huge difference in terms of the relationships you have, not only with your professors, but with your fellow classmates, and as well as kind of the intimate setting of being in Rome up on the Giunicolo. I liked it a lot more. I also, I had attended the College of Worcester for 1 year. I went there to play baseball and ended up hurting my shoulder again, not playing. But the point being is it was a small school, it was 2,000 kids, and that experience of seeing what the difference between 2,000 kids and having, the biggest class I had was like a 50-person business econ 101 class or something, whereas the smallest class I had at UWM in the lower levels before you got into like upper level 500 history classes or whatever, 200 kids, 150 kids, lecture hall. Yeah. Especially in the business world, you're talking about some classes were 500 kids.
Yep.
And so there is almost zero interpersonal relationships with the professors, other than you having to show up, hand in a piece of paper at the end of the class that shows that you were there, and then you move on.
No, I remember the same thing at Arizona State, sitting in the
you're a number, you're not a face, you're not a person.
In the back was a perfect place to fall asleep.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Nice.
Or we had, classes where
the door.
Did you guys have clickers when you were going to school to show attendance when you do like quizzes, or you were probably a little bit before that?
No, we didn't. I mean, Arizona, I don't even remember how it worked with the attendance policy.
Because I remember we had business classes where we had these clickers you had to click, and they'd be like, pick which is the right answer that we just talked about, so they'd know if you were there. Right. And there was like 8 of us in one class, and there'd be like 4 people sitting in the back row, all with like 10 clickers on their desks. And you could get away with that because the professor wasn't going to walk around, and they didn't, they didn't really care. As long as somebody said I was there, then they could say, hey, I've got good attendance rates at my class.
Johnny was here, I clicked his button.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, there was a huge difference, and I think one of the other bigger, things that I found really valuable and kind of took away from AUR was that the diversity of the professors was super important. When I was here, we had James Walston, we had Bjorn Thomason, we had Parker Borg, Luca Ratti was here, Alessandro Signorini, and you were getting perspective from people from all over the world, and especially in international relations. I think that was one of the biggest keys to a lot of the people in my kind of tenure here, their success moving on in life. We have a lot of alumni that are working in, either big name companies or NGOs, the World Food Program, UN, and I think a lot of their ability to go into these positions and adapt immediately was because they were dealing with teachers and professors who prepared them internationally to succeed, not just in America, or not to go home and be like, ooh, I've got a little bit more culture than you now because I studied abroad or whatever, which was, invaluable to me as a person, and I think invaluable to a lot of, the fellow alumni that I still keep in contact with. And it's, something that we'll have forever, and we'll never, not be able to gain the perspective of, taking the time to sit down with somebody and actually learn what their life was like in their home country versus just seeing it on a movie or reading it in a book or whatever.
Right. It's better to live it, feel
Correct.
it, touch it.
But have classes with those kids. I mean, I remember having a class that was called the History of the Balkans that Professor Thomason was running, and we literally had a kid from every single Balkan country in the class.
Very cool.
And it was terrifying at times when you'd have two kids whose families historically had hated each other or killed each other, sitting in class and staring daggers at each other, shouting out, you liar or whatever in the middle of class, and watching it go down. But everybody at the end of it would go out afterwards and go grab a beer at Archie and be friends, because I think it made people realize that the problems that might have existed in the past aren't even remotely not relatable, because obviously they're relatable when your family's been, persecuted for whatever reason. But you could see that they were gaining a perspective and an understanding of the other person as an individual and a unique person, not just, oh, well, he's Serbian or he's Bulgarian or she's Bosnian or whatever it might be. Right. It was awesome to see. I mean, I don't think you get anything like that in the States unless you're going to like a super small college that has a very diverse student body, which, although, there are a lot of colleges that are diverse, it's still, more majority not, it's pretty homogeneous, if that's the right way to put it.
Internationally uninternational.
Correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the level of culture that just exists in this city on a daily basis, walking around and hearing 5, 10, 15 different languages other than Italian.
Yep.
And seeing, the hustle and the struggle of how hard some of these people work who, Italians will talk, I don't want to say talk poorly about, but, the immigrant issue here in the country has become a huge talking point. And those are the people that I think you see working harder than anybody, because they don't have a choice. Like they've made their decision to come and live in this country. And if they don't work hard, it just gives everybody, validation to their negative thoughts about them, when in actuality, they're just trying to live their lives too.
Yeah.
And
I think one thing that I've seen recently that I've never seen in Rome before, and it's starting to pop up in different neighborhoods in different areas of the cities, are immigrants just simply with a broom.
Cleaning the streets.
Cleaning the streets.
Which is...
And every time I see them, I always give them €1 or €2, whatever I got in my pocket, because it's absolutely something that the locals would never consider.
No.
To go clean the space in front of their own shop is a kind of a problem.
But they do it daily, and then they're hosing it off and whatever it might be. But
again, a poor guy, an immigrant who's decided to make that move to this country for a better opportunity, better chance to possibly even use this as a springboard to get into the rest of Europe.
Yep.
I help them on their way. Or help them get set up.
Because you can appreciate somebody actually realizing that, hey, I could stand here with my hat out in front of a grocery store, which I feel like there's a lot more of that than there used to be. Just people standing with their hat out and wondering why you're not handing them money. And it's like, well, you're not doing anything. But then you see these guys with the broom and the garbage bags, and they're cleaning up the leaves or the glass or whatever it might be. And it kind of makes you feel like, wow, this person... Although their struggle is probably legitimately real, they're at least trying, and they're at least putting themselves out there to make their community better.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know, it's something that maybe I just didn't notice when I lived here 10 years ago.
I've seen it recently.
But really, even when we've come back every year in the last 2 or 3 years, it's gotten, there's almost somebody outside of every establishment where somebody could be spending money on something else. Coffee shops, grocery stores. I don't know. I see a lot less like street people with dogs, though, which in the past it used to be, every corner there was somebody, 2, 3, 4 dogs sitting there. And I know there used to be a stipend the Italian government would give these people to take care of the dogs. I don't know if that's still the case now. But there's definitely been some bigger changes societally that you can notice.
Right.
And maybe we don't notice them as much because we have come back or tried to come back every year. But I have friends who, used to live here and then haven't been back in 10 years, and they're flabbergasted by the changes that have occurred in the last, decade, basically.
Sure.
And then, one of the other biggest things I've noticed is you have a lot less conversation in public, maybe. Is that the right way? Whereas like buses, it was always people talking and talking and talking. Yeah. And now it's just people heads down on their phones.
Yeah.
And if you get on a bus and there's not 10 people staring at their phone the whole time with headphones in. And I'm guilty of it too. I mean, I'm listening to a podcast or doing something, but it's very. There seems to be a lot less human interaction than there was in the past, where you say hi to somebody on the street and they're like visibly like, why did you just say hi to me? I don't know you. Who are you? Do I know you? Whereas in the past, you kind of, no matter which neighborhood we lived in, you got to know the neighbors because they wanted to know who the foreigner was next door and what his deal was or her deal, because it's their neighborhood, not yours, and you're a guest in that neighborhood. You know what I mean? It's
I think the first time I've lived in the area where I live now for about 7 years, and it was this year finally that our neighbors upstairs asked me why I put a pumpkin out for Halloween. I do it every year.
Yeah. And it took them 6 years to...
Yeah, just to go, oh, wait a minute, maybe we can ask you why you're making a hole in this pumpkin's face and putting a candle in it at the end of the month. Again, cultural differences, Halloween, they don't understand that concept. For
Halloween, there's no age.
Halloween,
that's
right. But, it's little things like that. I mean, we live in it. I feel kind of sometimes like it's becoming more Americanized, because when I was in Phoenix, I really didn't know my neighbors as well.
Yeah.
So it was all very kind of secluded, and so I lived for the last 7 years. You don't see your neighbors until they're moving. You don't get to know them. And say, oh, well, we're leaving next month. Oh, great, nice to meet you. Bye-bye. So, yeah, I don't know. That may be just where I'm living. Which
I don't know. I feel like that's in all, like a lot of cities these days, though. People just don't know their neighbors. Like they, I think New York is a great example. We have a friend who, when I do go down to work, they live in the East Village, and he's lived there since like 1971 in the same apartment.
Right.
And he's like, 40 years ago, which is kind of hysterical, but 40 years ago, we knew everybody. You knew everybody in the building. Everybody knew everybody's kids. Everybody knew where they were allowed to play and where they weren't. Everybody looked out for everybody. And this is in the East Village during the 70s, which was like the mecca of...
Not the best time in New York.
Probably, but I mean, he's also talking about the crack epidemic and all the other stuff that happened in the early 80s with the violence and the gang violence. And he was saying it was safer then than it probably is now, because at least everybody knew...
There was always a lookout.
There was always somebody with their eyes open going, oh, well, he's walking down the street. I wonder where he's going. Oh, he's going to the grocery store to buy whatever it might be for his parents.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now there's like this disconnect between people where instead of having like a conversation with somebody, people would rather just, friend, comment on somebody they're never going to meet and probably never ever have an actual human interaction with on the internet, which is, indicative of the way technology is pushing the world. But I think, Rome being a city of neighborhoods, Orione, is one of those places that you can still kind of get to know your neighbors if you're willing to put yourself out there and make the effort. Because you say hi to somebody enough times, eventually they're going to say hi back. Even if they don't speak a lick of English, or even if they have a disdain for Americans or foreigners or whatever it might be, eventually you're going to break through. And I think like a smile helps a lot. In this country, at least, I've noticed more than ever is like people stare. People always stare in Italy. I mean, that's why everybody wears sunglasses all the time. But the lack of eye contact that people are sharing is kind of almost disturbing. Like you doing whatever, and you look up and there's 4 people staring at you, and you lock eyes with one of them, and they immediately
just
shut down. And it's like, wait, okay, hi, like, what's going on?
Yeah, I remember that the first time I came to Italy, and I wrote it in my journal, was saying this was probably my first shock about Italians, is the glance they give you, the head to toe.
The once over.
The head to toe.
And they've immediately made all of their decisions about who you are as an individual in that 3 seconds.
This was almost 20 years ago. I had long blonde hair at the time. So I really freaked him out.
Yeah.
So, what the hell is this dude? But... you don't even really get that anymore.
It's very...
They've stopped that. They go halfway there. Go, okay, now I'll go back down to my iPhone.
Yep. Or they check the shoes real quick and then neck up or whatever.
What kind of phone have you got? What shoes you wearing?
Yeah. That's all
they need to know.
Well, I mean, doesn't that tell you everything about a person?
In this day and age, I guess it does.
But that's like, this is one of the other things I've noticed since we've been back that's kind of, I don't even know if it should be bothering me, but like, we live right across from the Testaccio market, and there are these 4 girls who are all Roma girls, gypsies, to use lack of a better term. And they're wearing designer jeans. And I'm not talking like fake designer jeans, legit designer jeans. $200 or €150 sneakers. a Gucci bag or a Prada bag or a Valentino bag.
I'm going to go out on a limb and guess they probably didn't buy it.
But maybe they did.
Who knows?
Maybe they did. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say they did. How can you possibly go up to somebody when you've got a $700 outfit on and ask for change?
Yeah.
Like, in what world do they think people are going to have any sort of sympathy or even empathy for them to be like, wow, I really should try to help this person? It's like,
if you've got the means to do that.
If you've got the means to wear 150 euro Nike Air Maxes, like, I don't even wear 150 euro shoes and I own my own business. Like, it doesn't make me a better person. What I'm saying is, like, who decided that the culture that says, hey, we should help out people, especially in the most Catholic city in the world, where and choose who to help or not to help, because you can't help but walk by some of these people and be like, wow, that guy, I don't even possibly know, I can't even possibly fathom or begin to understand what that person has gone through to be where they are here today in Rome.
Right.
And so then you start wondering, oh man, maybe their struggle is, super real, and maybe they got 5 kids back home that they haven't seen in 10 years because they can come over here, and even if they're only making 20 euros a day, that's worth how much money back in their home country. It's, I don't know, having worked in the bars here and worked with guys from all over the world, from Africa, from Central Asia, Bangladesh, whatever, and you start talking to them and you start learning their stories, and you realize that people are a lot deeper and have a lot more motivation to do things when they have kids, when they have family who's in need, or they have sick family back home, and some of these people make choices and never go home.
Right.
I remember a couple of the chefs or cooks that I worked with who were from Bangladesh, and they're like, I'm never going back to Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Oh, well, how much family do you have there? Oh, I got 4 kids and a wife, and my parents are still alive, and her parents and brothers and sisters. I'm like, you're never going to go back? They're like, what? How?
You can't.
You're
not going to make them.
And those are people that you struggle, and you're like, and you're working. Like, I want to help you do more with what you've got here. But again, you see people like priests and nuns walking past everybody, heads down.
Yep.
No sympathy, no empathy, no desire to. And maybe it's not everybody. Obviously, you can't generalize and speak on the whole. But when you see it every day, you got to start wondering:
the percentage is quite high in my opinion.
Yeah.
From what I've seen.
But the city as a whole, I mean, the tourist thing is always going to be there.
Sure.
I think it's a problematic issue because it's one of those things that Italy as a whole, other than the north for the most part, has based their entire economy on tourism.
Yep.
And so as things have changed, and the way travel has changed, and the way people explore the world has changed, you have this issue of like, tanti turistici, ma porchi sordi.
Yep.
And I had this conversation with a cab driver the other night where he was saying, well, there's more tourists than ever, but they have less money than ever. Right. Because instead of, back in the day where you went on a European vacation, you'd go to one place, maybe 2 weeks.
Yep.
Now it's like the crazy people, and I think they're crazy because I don't know why you would want to travel every 2 days and fly and blah, blah, blah.
God, no.
But they're coming over for 2 weeks, so they're going to fly into London because the flight is cheap. Then they're going to catch a quick Ryanair flight to Berlin for 2 days. Then they're going to shoot to Paris for 2 days. Then they're in Barcelona for 2 days. Then they're in Rome for 3 nights, and then they fly out of wherever.
Out of Milan.
But instead of coming and actually spending money within an economy and really supporting that economy with those tourist dollars, it's all getting divided out, and there's not a lot of the staying power is still in Rome, and the number of people coming in and out each day is pretty much the same as it was 10 years ago. The problem is they aren't the same type of tourists. Everybody's on a budget. People would rather think they're saving money by shopping at a supermarket and making sandwiches in their apartment or their Airbnb or whatever, not realizing that the best plate of carbonara in the whole world is right around the corner for €9.
Just downstairs.
And it's kind of sad that it's gotten to that point, but I think that's also a level of the people who do seek those things out are getting a way higher quality of experience, and the reality of what they're experiencing is much more valuable. And then everybody's just trying to do it on the cheap and kind of get in, get out, see the 6 things on the bucket list they need to see, get the selfie with the Colosseum, and
then out.
And then out.
Yep. I'm in my experience as well. Doing these photo workshops, I get a mix of people come through that are here for a full 2 weeks. Okay, they flew into Rome, they're flying out of Rome, and maybe, just maybe, they'll go tour Lazio or they'll go up to
Florence.
They'll just stay locally. Love those people. But I've also had the guests that come in and go, I got here on today. Well, let's use this example. Today is Thursday. They got here on Tuesday, and on Saturday they've got to fly off to Greece, and then they're coming back up, and then by the end of 3 weeks or 4 weeks, then they're going to come back here. But they've hit every European capital. So yeah, it's a mixed bag out there what we've got for the tourists, but God bless them, they keep coming.
And they keep spending money, but just apparently not as much as they used to.
No, exactly.
And then, the other thing with the tourism is you hear about all the kind of bureaucratic nightmare stuff going on here in Rome, where you have companies buying the rights to be the only ones who can give tours, and you have basically mom and pop shops either folding or being like, hey, I gotta cash in now, because if I don't, what's to say in 2 years or 3 years my lease isn't going to change, and then I'm not going to be able to afford that, and then I'm getting nothing from my business. And you have a culture of people who the superficial beauty and the outward appearance is mega important, and it's about having that smart car and that smartphone and those smart clothes versus investing in your future and investing in your education and whatever else. It's a really interesting mix of, because you can walk down the street of, downtown Rome, say Via del Corso. Yeah. You can walk down Corso for 25 minutes and literally see a billionaire, a street person, and everything in between in 10 blocks. It's a crazy, that's one of the best parts about Rome, is that there is no norm. There is no, like, oh, he does this. You're like, well, you have no idea what they do. And most of the time, nobody defines themselves by what they do. They define themselves as a human or whatever their family is. And like, I remember working at the bar one time, and we had a millionaire sitting next to the guy who sold cigarettes on the street, just rapping, having a conversation, having a beer together. Did not matter. They did not care what either status in life was. Just two dudes at a bar having a beer. And that's, I think that's something that I took away when we did, open our own place, and I opened my own bar. Was, everybody's different and everybody has their own story. So to judge a book by its cover based on what they do for a living, you're wasting your time. I almost never ask people what they do for a living at my bar because it's not important. You come in, you're a good person, you're respectful. Like, unless I need you for like some networking thing, and even then that'll make itself apparent. The fifth, sixth, seventh time you come in, when you say, hey, by the way, this is what I do. If you ever need any help with something, let me know. That's great. It's not, your job doesn't define you as a human being, nor is it what you're going to be for the rest of your life. Although here in Italy, it might be, depending on, job security and everything else. And that's scary too, is that the job market here is
terrible.
It's weird. You talk to these kids and they're like, oh, I'm making €1,200 a month. And
you talk to kids, you talk to adults in the same
situation. But I'm saying they're 23, 24, and they're like, yeah, maybe in 10 years I'll get that up to like $1,500 a month. And it's like
15.
Wow, it's crazy. And it's disheartening, because a lot of these people want to work hard and they want to succeed and move up and do better things, but then they realize that if they have a job, like, I might need to just hold on to this job, because if I leave it, what if I don't find another job, and then I'm that guy who's 40 who left his whatever job to try something new and it failed. It's the level of entrepreneurship here versus in America is, I don't want to say lacking, but you just see a lot less people going out and like giving it a go. And thinking, hey, you know what?
Well, I think a lot of that is due to the amount of red tape that you have to cut through to get anywhere.
But there's red tape everywhere.
There's red tape everywhere, right.
Like when people are like, oh, it must have been super easy. It's not easy to own a bar and restaurant and hostel in the middle of nowhere, Vermont. Like, the amount of red tape we have, yes, is probably less than there is here, and the bureaucratic nightmare that is Rome, is indicative of any project trying to get built. But it seems as though you have a lack of, maybe it's like positive energy, and that when things are down, things are down. But when things are up, like Roma qualifies for the next round of Champions League, and everybody in town who's a Roma fan has got a little bit of a smile on their face and a little bit more, whereas the day after Italy didn't qualify for the World Cup, you could have heard a pin drop on the tram, except you just heard my kid shouting out the window, what's that? What museum is that? Can we go there? And it's a very interesting dynamic that exists here, but it's also one of the reasons why I think people fall in love with this city and people truly do, accept the fact that they could be children of Rome and not be from Rome.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool idea, and I don't think exists many other places in the world. Like, you can't move to New York and say you're a New Yorker.
No.
But you can come to Rome, and after a while, you can become Roman.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is, I don't know,
unique.
It's unique, but it's amazing, and that's one of the reasons why people who do, like you said when we were talking earlier, when people do fall in love with the city, then it's like I'm going back to Rome, and I could have gone to 100 different places instead of Rome every year, but every year, when we're planning a vacation or we're planning a trip or our season ends and we got 2 months where we're not going to make any money, so we close down the place. Yeah. And it's like, well, where should we? Let's go to Rome and we'll see if we want to take a day trip somewhere. Or maybe we'll go up to Berlin and see some friends for a weekend. But it's almost too easy. Do you know what I mean? Which is great because this is that city.
Yeah.
There's something on every corner to discover. There's an unlimited amount of history and knowledge that will never be able to be absorbed by one individual person. The eclectic nature of the people who live here is, I don't know, I haven't found a city, maybe New York. I mean, New York is close, but you don't have the diversity of people literally across the table from each other that you do here.
You're right.
And I think that's super special. I think it's rare, and I hope, even with all the changes and everything that's different than it used to be, I hope that doesn't get lost. Because if that gets lost, I feel like Rome might truly lose its identity as what it is. So,
switching gears, we talked about tourism here in Rome. What are some similarities or glaringly obvious differences between Rome and Vermont? In terms of how you guys are running this hostel, you're working in a restaurant, you've got all the things set up there. Tourism is obviously very, very important. But what is the market of Vermont? I know personally, being from America, that it's beautiful in the autumn.
Yep.
You've got great skiing in the winter.
If it snows.
If it snows.
Thanks, climate change.
Yeah. And the summer, I'm imagining, also
gorgeous.
You've got very similar to Rome. You've got a couple of lulls between the tourist tides, but after that, it's very, very full on.
Yeah, it's a unique landscape in the sense that where we're located, we're basically an hour from every major ski mountain in the state, minus Jay Peak, which is on the Canadian border. But that being said, you also then have to drive past every other major mountain in Vermont before you get to us. Mm-hmm. And being 35 minutes off the highway in the opposite direction, or you got to go up Route 100 to get to us, and you have to pass every other mountain that's south of us. We don't get the same level of traffic as everybody else, which is one of the reasons why everybody loves Sugarbush and where we are, and the Mad River Valley, because it is unique in that sense. But in the same sense, it's also kind of like a bubble inside of a bubble inside of a bubble inside Vermont.
Right.
And so it's very homogeneous in nature. There's more second and third homeowners in the town we live in than there are residents. And when the town is busy, there's not enough services to service. We go from 1,500 people to 12,000 people overnight on a busy ski weekend. Mm-hmm. And you can imagine, how many restaurants can be supported on 1,500 people when there's, legitimate business, let's say 8 months out of the year, versus how many people need services when there's 12,000 people. And so that's, I think, here versus in Rome versus in Vermont, you have, an unlimited amount of services. Mm-hmm. You could never, ever try every restaurant. You could never, ever go to every bar. You could try, but you could never do it. Whereas in where we live, there's 7 options, 10 options. Yeah. So it becomes not stagnant because people do work really hard and do make the best of the seasons when they are there. It's a difference of there's just not as many options. And so it becomes a struggle to not only find new things, because obviously there's just not a lot of new things popping up. But if you do want to go, let's say, out to dinner or whatever, you could drive an hour just to get to the restaurant. And if you're driving an hour on the highway, you're going 40 miles, 50 miles. Mm-hmm. And that's, for somebody, like my wife and I, if we didn't have to own a car, we wouldn't own a car. Mm. It becomes frustrating. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
But it also, the isolation is nice. The natural beauty is unbelievable. you literally picture, the Douro Valley in Portugal where all the vineyards are. It's that, except we just still got all the trees.
Sure.
And it's just rolling hills, beautiful mountains. The skiing, when there is snow, is some of the best in the entire United States.
Yep.
And it's a unique community.
Yeah.
It's full of entrepreneurs from all over, from all walks of life. Some of the biggest companies that exist, that have come out of the state: Vermont Smoke and Cure, Green Mountain Coffee, which is now Keurig Green Mountain Coffee,
Sure.
Ben and Jerry's.
Ben and Jerry's.
The list kind of goes on. There's a lot of people who came to Vermont and were like, "This is a cool place, and I can make something happen here."
Right.
And they did.
Yeah.
And that's, there's that entrepreneurial spirit in the town where we live, where you have almost everybody either owns their own business or commutes up to, Burlington where there's work, or they work at the State House in Montpelier. But really good education system. We have P3 afternoon program for our son that's free. So it's something that the state provides. The state itself, there's only 500,000 residents in Vermont, so the healthcare system is really good. The infrastructure, for the most part, is on the way up, but then you have natural disasters like Hurricane Irene come through, and the next thing you know, you're spending 4 years rebuilding an entire town. But Rome is Rome, and Vermont is Vermont. I think it's one of those
apples to oranges.
Yeah, because it's two totally different environments. It's two totally different landscapes, and with the tourist thing, we're a tourist-based economy. We open our doors just early December, close when the snow melts in mid-April, and then we won't reopen again until
that's where I was going.
Labor Day, basically.
That's where I was going with you.
Because our clientele is average age is probably closer to 40 than it is 30, and they're the resourceful, outdoorsy. Like if they could camp in the winter, they wouldn't stay with us,
right?
But they can camp in the summer because we live right on Green Mountain National Forest land.
Gotcha.
So they can park their car wherever they want on the highway, walk 100 yards into the woods and set up a tent. And it's totally within their right. It's legal as long as they don't start a fire.
Yeah.
And so you have a huge dichotomy, and it's like crazy winter heavy. And then the summers are, nice to just kind of hang out and do projects on the building and travel.
So you guys aren't open then during the summer at all?
Not really. We're open for lodgers. We usually have an in-house manager that'll stay and take in guests.
Yeah.
But the guest traffic is, few and far between, and has kind of hit a level in the summer where it's pretty much the same every summer. And the winters are, it's based on the snow, but we know we're going to be full every weekend because of our price point and our reputation. And it is a very, very there's two seasons, and it's winter and then basically Labor Day through Columbus Day.
Yeah.
And that's not for everybody. Obviously there's other places that are able to make it work and are open 50, 51 weeks a year, but they service a much more local clientele on a regular basis, and there's only 3 coffee shops in town. So everybody's going to get a piece.
But in general, in Vermont, are there a lot of hostels?
No, there's a few.
So it makes you guys very unique in that.
Yeah, I don't want to say we were the first, because there were a couple of boarding houses that existed, and there were hiker hostels because the Long Trail and the Appalachian Trail run through Vermont.
Okay.
So the Long Trail is top to bottom. The Appalachian Trail is the one that passes through Killington and shoots up to Maine, but starts down in Georgia.
Okay.
And so you had hiker hostels, but hiker hostels are very different than a European style, boutique-ish hostel that's clean, nice, linens, whatever. Some of these hiker hostels are literally bring your own mattress, bring your own blankets, bring your own stuff, and here's a bed frame. Here's a bed frame, and there could be 25 beds in that room, or there could be 5. So the hostel market in the States is still one of those emerging markets where, unless you've traveled to Europe, and not always, but people still to this day don't have an idea of what a hostel actually is, and then they've seen the movie Hostel, so then they think they're going to get murdered.
That didn't do very good for the business.
No, and you have to, having to explain to people what and how a hostel functions is one of the best parts of our job, and probably one of the worst parts of our job, because it's such a simple concept. It's no, you give me money, and I give you a clean bed to sleep in, but there'll be other people in your room, and you're going to share a bathroom.
Yeah.
And sometimes people get it like that, and sometimes it takes people 2 hours to realize that it is not, or a night or whatever, to realize that it's not the situation they want to be sleeping in, and that's fine. It's not for everybody, and we know that, but the people that do appreciate it and do like it, is a representation of our clientele, and and we're lucky enough to have like most of our guests are return guests, and the ones who aren't are usually personal recommendations from previous guests.
Cool.
So we have like a really good group of people who are all coming to do the same thing. They've all got the same mindset, and we have very, very few problems with guests in general. I think we've only had to ask a couple to leave, and that was due to some other outside circumstances, and that's in 8 years, and having tens of thousands of people come and stay at our place. So
fantastic.
It's been a fun ride, and it's exciting to see how it's going to change and how it'll be different when we're not there. Like I said earlier, it's terrifying because like, what can I do from here? Nothing.
Any plans to flip it on its head and open the Hostel Vermont in Rome?
I have talked with some people about maybe doing something downtown. The problem is acquisition of a building, because the way our business model is set up, it's based on ownership, not rent.
Okay.
If we could do it, I think we have the model set up and we know exactly how many beds and where it could be and what it could happen. But you're talking about to buy a building downtown. Yeah. Millions and millions of dollars. So that would require outside investment and a whole bunch of fortuna, luck. And but the hard work has been done. We've got the experience now, and we know a lot about like what works and what doesn't, just from trial and error, and just from being like young green business owners who didn't really, we were both had our own skill sets, and I had been running bars and she'd been in hospitality her whole life, grew up in inns, restaurants, and that sort of thing. So we had our own skill sets, and we had we brought something unique to the table as individuals, and now as a couple and as a young family, it changes your perspective on how to deal with people and how the business world works, and what actually is important, and the steps you need to take to continue that success. So I would love to open a place here. I've also said, when people ask me, I will never open a business in Rome because it's absolutely a bureaucratic nightmare with the red tape. But now I'm in talks about actually starting a company with some buddies to export some beer and do a whole bunch of stuff that I've been working on for years here, trying to like plant seeds and get people to get on board. But I was talking to one of the students here recently about a project I've been working on that I haven't been paid a penny for, and I've been working on for over 4 years.
Yep.
And he's like, wait, you haven't? I'm like, dude, it's a side project. It's a side hustle. If it works, and when it does work, it's going to be great. But nobody does the work for you, and nobody puts out the effort that you're going to put out if you actually believe in something. Yeah. So I think that's why we've been really successful with what we have in Vermont. I think that's why my wife will be extremely successful here in the Rome Sustainable Food Project. It's work ethic. Having the desire to not only better your situation, but better yourself. I think that's very important, knowing that like you don't know everything and you're not going to have everything figured out. And the more you can take in on a daily basis, and the more you can gain perspective, like we were talking about earlier, it puts you in a situation to succeed. And not that the success will come, but at least you've put the pieces in place to give yourself the opportunity.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Last question, or last piece that you could offer current students at AUR. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give them in this world of business and international relations? For those that are currently studying.
Those studying.
Ones that are about to come to study.
I think getting the lay of the land where you're living is super important. I feel like there were a lot of kids that when I studied abroad for the year who never spent a weekend in Rome, who never actually learned anything about this city other than the bus line they had to take to get to AUR, where Da Simone's was for lunch, where, this one restaurant that was around the corner from their place was for dinner. Yeah. And then maybe their zona, the Rione.
Sure.
But barely anybody. I mean, everybody was like, I'm going to Barcelona, I'm going to Paris, I'm going to Lisbon, and it's great. I mean, it's great to see those places, and it's great to experience other cultures and other places in Europe, because you do have that access. Yeah. But at the same point, if you're going to live somewhere, you should probably like get to know that place as well. And that's, when I was studying abroad here, I think I only went on like 5 or 6 trips in 2 semesters outside of Rome. Whereas on the weekends, I was meeting people all over the city, going to different rione, trying out different restaurants, really just trying to get like a good lay of the land and how things function. And I think if you can get that base level, that's when you start seeing how the underlying kind of, what's the right word, gears work, how the city actually functions, what actually makes wheels spin, and it gives you a good perspective on like how you could be successful in your own way. Granted, Rome is not an easy city to exist in. There's, besides not being able to rely on public transportation or garbage pickup or any sort of, the functional things that work in most major cities, it definitely is a city that you can figure out how to walk everywhere pretty quickly in the downtown area. Like, you don't need to wait for 45 minutes for an 8 tram to come when you could walk up the hill to school in 10 minutes. It's one of those, you become reliant on things that maybe you don't need to be reliant on because you haven't branched out and tried to discover what it is else that's out there. I mean, one of my
possibilities.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things to do when I was here is walk a different way to wherever I was going every day. Because then you get to see, you get to find that pastry shop that nobody else knows about, or you get to find that fornaio in the Jewish ghetto that is only open until 11, but you're coming home on your way from work at 5 in the morning and the guys are tossing you rolls out the door. Like, that stuff, I think, is what makes this city great, and I think it's what a lot of people miss because they're so caught up in the amount of dog poop on the street or the fact that the recycling trash hasn't been emptied for 5 weeks and there's just a pile around it, when in fact there's so much more out here and there's so much more to see and learn about and kind of experience that it at least for me, it was more about learning Rome and being somebody who was knowledgeable about the city of Rome. And not the history per se. I mean, I know a shitload about, excuse my language, about Roman. About Roman history, but that's because I did some tours here and there and like studying in school. But it's about learning about the people and meeting and getting to know your neighbors and just becoming a part of the society. And if there's any society that's going to welcome people, especially if they're making the effort, it's the Italians. You just have to get past that first wall of like, wait, who are you and why are you here? And once you're past that, it's like, we always say, you're like family.
Trust with them,
everybody's like family then. And that's that would be my advice. Go out and see the city. Don't be so focused on trying to get to every major capital and whatever. You have plenty of time in your life to do that. And if you can learn Rome, you can learn any other city in the world. I mean, that's, one of our friends back home who has a restaurant always said, if you can make it work in Vermont when there's less people than there are in one neighborhood in Brooklyn, you can make it anywhere in the world. So,
sound advice.
I try, but
this was fun. You have to come in and do this more often.
Whenever you'd like, sir. Like I said,
don't call me sir. You make me feel old.
Well, I also like to be respectful. But no, thank you.
I don't wear my respectable hat.
I appreciate it. It's
you're part of the AUR family.
It's a pleasure to be back, and it's a pleasure to know that.
You're more than welcome to come in. We do these podcasts, vidcasts, periodically, and next semester we'll be doing it each week. So to come in and sit down and share your thoughts with us and just even grab a microphone and talk to the kids, I think that's what they really get out of this. That, hey, I've survived it, I've lived it, I've done it, I'm back for more.
Keep coming back for more. Never stop.
Sometimes the city can be punishing, but you're a prize fighter, just keeps coming back for more punches from Rome, but they're the good punches.
They are.
That's what keeps bringing you back.
Even taking a 2-hour round trip commute to get my kid to school in the morning on time and then get here today.
Not a joy.
You're like, man, an hour on the tram isn't that fun.
Oh, no.
There's a lot to see and a lot to teach him, so it's a good experience for everybody.
All right, well, Giles, I'm going to roll us out of here.
Thanks
for coming in. Nice to meet you, buddy. Welcome back anytime you want. Hey, everybody, check us out. This is another Alumni Roundtable featuring the one and only Giles Smith, former AUR alumni. Keep tuning in to Mouth of the Wolves, the Media Club, and the Alumni Roundtable here on YouTube, SoundCloud, and on iTunes.